This meeting and all other meetings of this council are open to the public. Proper notice has been posted and given to the press in accordance with Wisconsin statutes, so the citizenry may be aware of the time, place, and agenda of the meeting. Roll call, please.
Gunderson.
Here.
Appleby. Here. Rasmussen.
Here.
All present.
Next item will be to approve the minutes from the February 2nd of 2015 meeting. Do I hear a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from February 2nd, 2015 meeting.
And I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Good. Okay. All right, citizen appearances? Anything?
Nope.
Have anything to say, Caitlin, or no? I take it no. Our fourth item, discussion and possible action on interim financing with the City Hall project. You're up again.
Okay, another schedule. Yeah, this one too. Oh, okay, great. So this one is a little bit more than food for thought at this point, given the timeline that you have. But what we're looking at for the City Hall project is obtaining interim financing. So with the goal of coming before the council on March 16th, if it would be approved tonight, to seek authorization to proceed with interim financing. We gave a presentation, I want to say it was last summer, on the City Hall project and the possible financing sources, and we showed a number of different options at that point in time. And one of the options that we looked at was a 10-year note with a balloon option that you would refinance after that 10 years. So this approach is a little bit different than that, in that you'd be seeking out interim financing for the total project cost, and then refinancing that relatively quickly. I mean, the soonest you could do it would be 3 months, but ideally you'd probably be looking at 6 months, maybe even a little bit longer, depending on how long the project goes. And then locking in with permanent financing at that time with a general obligation refunding bond. And the purpose for doing that instead of the 10-year note with the balloon option at the end is that 10 years from now, it's really uncertain in terms of where interest rates are. The advantage is that you get to take advantage of the market and the current conditions that we have, and interest rates are very low. So it also gives you some flexibility in terms of project costs if you do have some overruns or that type of thing. As you lock into interim or permanent financing, you'd be able to pick that up at that time. Not that you wouldn't with other financing, but that kind of gives you, I think, a little bit more flexibility, allows you to take advantage of current market conditions. So with that being said, what we're looking at with this, similar to the wastewater treatment facility, in that we'd be looking at kind of a bond anticipation note. This would be a general obligation versus a revenue bond, which would rely on user rates. General obligation is going to rely on the tax revenue. But in this case, we'd be looking at most likely competitively bidding out this financing versus working with a single firm. And the reason for doing so is this is a little bit more of a simpler, I want to say simpler process. You don't have the industrial service agreement, the TID revenues, all of the factors that make the wastewater treatment facility a little bit more complicated and maybe a little bit less attractive for potential bidders. In this case, it's just a little bit more straightforward, in which case we believe it would be much more attractive. And the advantage to going out competitively and bidding this competitively is it allows the city to take advantage of the best possible interest rates. So I think that's kind of our recommendation at this point in time, unless really, from this group here, you have interest in keeping it maybe local and having us work with a bank or a couple different banks within the city. That's certainly something that I think we could take some direction on tonight as well.
Could probably have them look at it. That's no guarantee we would go with them, correct?
Right.
Just to be courteous.
Sure. So, I mean, it's something we could we can certainly consider.
Would you explain to me again, this interim financing would have a timetable of how many years before we'd have to lock into the remaining balance of the
I think in
loan?
this case, we'd probably set it at a 1 year, do a 1 year term on it. And then looking at, within that year term, what we do is make it callable at any time, so that at any point in time, you'd have the ability to call the debt and refinance it to permanent financing.
Is there benefits to going more than 1 year?
Potentially in terms of rate, that's certainly something that we could look at as well.
And then after that period, we would be obligated to tie ourselves to a 10-year,
Probably,
Was it- or what
well,
was it?
we'd look at either a 10 or a 20 year for,
10 or 20?
yeah. I think what we had looked at last summer was total of 20
Yeah.
with the 10-year with the balloon. So I think that's kind of what we would
Yeah,
stick with.
that's what we talked about, when we talked about that, if you're using general obligation,
Mm-hmm.
that you could be, the 20-year, I think you guys had recommended, city council recommended not to pursue that, or that your
Right.
intent was not to pursue that.
Right.
And what you'd look at then is the 10-year, with the balloon payment in the 10th year, so essentially either in year number 9 or whatever it is, you'd end up having to refinance it for
Refinance,
the next 10 years.
Right,
Right.
right. So, and when we come to the council on the 16th, we'll have a proposed plan of financing that will show it in greater detail. It'll show your existing debt service schedules and the net rate that you're currently paying for debt service, and then what you'd be looking at with this project, both interim, and we'll make some projections long term as well.
The question I would have probably for the committee, then for the city council, then would be, you look at the first 2 steps, probably if we're looking at the second step, March 16th is when the full council meets, that's when if you wish to proceed towards interim financing or authorizing it, that's what he's talking about. In 2 weeks, he'll be at that meeting. Right now, all you're looking for, John, is just a simple motion or a simple recommendation to authorize interim financing, is that right?
Yeah, onto the common council.
Recommendation from here to get to the common council. Now then, the next step, the third step would be, the question I've got is, with that timing, we had been looking out, knowing that you've got 2 big projects being bid out, 2 big projects that come together to any of these meetings, that's gonna be a pretty big, pretty heady thing to have to sift through. The thought was, and actually April 21st is when the full council will come back together. That's that Tuesday where you end up getting pushed off,
Yep.
because that's by, I think it's state statute,
It's
you
state,
meet on the
yeah.
3rd Tuesday. We had thought, well, ahead of that, if you wanted to take a look at awarding the interim financing, the question would be whether April 6th is a good night for that, or if you'd want to back that up a week, or maybe even 2. It's up to you guys, but maybe we could even talk a little bit more about that at the full council too,
Sure.
or at least on the timeline. Ellers could give a little bit more info on.
Yeah, that would have to be a full council decision.
Right, right. So maybe that's something we'll hold for the 16th. We could talk a little bit more about that.
Right.
But going kind of beyond that, if you're looking to award bids on the project April 21st, we would then have funds available, is what we're projecting would be May 1st. And if, the sale gets pushed out beyond April 6th, this May 1st deadline could also get pushed back a little bit too in terms of when funds would be available. So I think that's, it's something we'd
Yeah. And the
Wanna
way
go
we've got
sooner
this
rather
right
than
now, I
later.
think we're looking at the very earliest that construction would start would be June, right? And that's we're gonna talk about that at that work session next on the 10th, a little bit about that timing there too. So if it's backed up a week or 2, technically we have some room in there. Our first bills on the construction probably wouldn't be till July.
July again.
On that too, huh? So that April 6th date, that's a little bit of a moving date if we need it to be.
Okay.
Any questions at all on that?
No, so we just want a motion authorizing interim financing, correct? I'll make a motion to that effect then.
I'll second. Do we need to vote on that?
Yep. You would, yeah, because you're making a recommendation
Yeah.
to the full city council.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
See you on the
Very good.
16th, and like I said, we'll have a more detailed plan at that time. So,
Very good.
Very good, thank you very much.
Well, thank you very
Yeah.
much, John. We
yeah.
appreciate it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Have a good evening.
Got a few more things, but we appreciate your time, sir.
Yeah.
Anything else on this?
No, we should be good. Okay.
Wow. Fine. See how it is.
Patrick and I will talk
We,
later.
yeah. Yep.
Thanks. Have a good night.
Have a good
Thanks,
night.
Dad.
Bye, have a good night.
Yep. Have a good one.
Okay, our next item will be discussion and possible action on rejecting assessor reevaluation quotes.
Yep, this is more of a procedural thing. We did go out and collect the full revaluation quotes, and then as we mentioned, or as I mentioned at the full council meeting, that proposal in the state budget would be to remove that function from the city. Now, we're not sure if that's going to hold in the state budget, but as far as we know right now, the full revaluation is probably not an option that makes sense for us at this point. And if that's the case, or if we, if we find out that there's some resolution with the state budget, it probably won't come till late summer. And at that point, if you wanted to go forward with a full revaluation, we would probably want to update our quotes anyway, because they'd be 9 to 10 months old by then.
Right.
So the recommendation on my end would be to recommend just rejecting those quotes so that you have a formal action that was taken on those.
And I'll make a motion to reject the assessor revaluation quotes.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Because we may be able to get by with a lot less
Right.
effort
Yep.
after the budget's passed, correct?
Yep, and so in those quotes, we had specified that we wanted the full revaluation, so we
Yep.
technically, if we would back down, we didn't collect any quotes on that anyway, so.
Right.
Okay.
Okay,
All right.
Good, moving on. Item number 6, discussion on the Lake Association support request.
yes, I did, last month we talked a little bit about, I think I had given you a copy of a letter from a few years ago and then also an appropriations request to the federal government. I did speak with Mr. Van Epps and Mr. Tolfa from the Lake Association. I met with them on Friday, this last Friday. I got an update on their status with the Lake District. I got an update on fundraising, pretty much an update on everything they're doing. I had passed the request or the topic of the letter of support to them, and they basically had asked us to hold off on that. And basically they would want to come either in May or June and give you guys an update on where they're at with the Lake District and an update on support or a letter of support, what that might mean. I basically said, well, here's what we were looking at last month, and they said, no, please hold off for 2 to 3 months.
And how does Holly feel about this?
I have not touched base with her on it yet, but I do know, when I had first talked to her, because she dropped me a line about the federal funding, or the federal appropriations. That was the first contact I had with her for letter of support, and then when I had talked to her a little bit later, probably earlier this year, she talked a little bit about the DNR grant, and obviously you guys are aware of their request to get support for the DNR grant. And then I had saw her last week, talked to her a little bit last week. She mentioned the federal appropriations again. When I talked to Mr. Van Epps and Mr. Tolfa, they had said that they would prefer to come and lead a request to you guys. And so with that, I had asked, I said, well, Holly reached out about the letter of support, and this is where the committee was last month, and we were looking at reviewing that this month. And Mr. Van Epps had mentioned that he would like to be the one that's here. So he said hold off until May, June on this.
We need to find out exactly who is their spokesperson and not deal with all these different entities. You're wasting your time talking to both groups. One of them needs to take charge and
They
get
did-
something together.
Yeah, and they did, Mr. Van Epps did mention, he said, he's the president of the group, and he said, I will be in touch with you with any formal requests. And I said,
So
okay.
then
Oh,
you
okay.
should let Holly know that everything has to go
Through him.
through Mr. Van Epstein,
Yep.
and
And-
nothing from her.
Yeah, and my understanding was they were going to let her know too that they had met with her Friday when I did too. When I met with them, they met with her.
Okay. Because we need a single spokesperson.
Sure. Yeah, and we did talk about that too on Friday, so.
Good.
So there would be no action on that one then.
All right. Then we'll move on to the discussion and possible action on the Wolf River Preservation Association membership.
I've got that in the agenda because last year they had sent the letter with a bill for the $600. And with that letter, they had also sent the $10 associate membership paperwork. And so when we brought it through the finance committee, the city council took a look at that and what you had, a year ago, what you had mentioned and what was recommended and approved was because the Lake Association has a $10 membership fee, you wanted to continue that membership with the Lake Association and then also take advantage of the associate membership for $10 with the Wolf River Preservation. I had talked a little bit, and this is about a year ago, that I had talked a little bit with that group and members from that group, and they had asked, why would the city be interested in getting out of this? And they had thought that the city was bound by an agreement to be a member of the Wolf River Preservation. And what I had told them was I would like to see that paperwork, because certainly if the city is bound to stick with that membership, that we would be doing whatever we're expected to do, whatever we agreed to do. And it's been a year and I haven't gotten any of those documents. I did talk to over the year, and as you guys know, we do talk with people from the town of Weyauwega. Talked to Mr. Biddison, and he's pretty active in the Wolf River Preservation, and he had asked, he said, well, what happened with the city's membership? And I told him, essentially what happened was we looked at it, compared that membership with the Lake Association, and the council decided to go for the $10. And he said, oh, okay. And I told him the same thing, that if we were required to maintain a certain level of participation, that we would, and that I had asked for formal documentation, and to date I didn't get anything yet. That being said, they have 2 meetings a year. Again, when they sent their documents this year, they didn't send us the letter and they didn't offer the associate membership, so
Hey.
doesn't surprise me too much, I guess.
Right.
But they do have a meeting that's coming up later this week. It's on Thursday. It's in Fremont. One of their topics is
Us.
City of Weyauwega membership status. Now, they haven't called and they haven't asked us to be there, but they did send along, I guess, that agenda. Now it's highlighted for that agenda. It's highlighted because I highlighted it. It's not highlighted because it came in the mail that way. But I did talk to the mayor. I mentioned to him everything I mentioned to you, that I asked him do you need somebody from the city at that meeting? And we didn't have a full yes or no. I didn't get an order to go to that meeting or anything like that. But I guess the question for you guys is, as it relates to Wolf River Preservation membership, it's something that they're going to be talking about at their meeting later in the week. Again, I've asked for their charter documents or whatever they've got, and I haven't gotten anything. I'm not going to assume that they don't exist or that they don't bind us to anything, but I've asked and I haven't seen it yet.
So are you available to go to that meeting on Thursday?
I may be able to.
I'm scheduled to be on second shift, unless I can get out of it.
Yeah.
But I think that we should have somebody there. If not the mayor, yourself, myself, Scott, as chairman of finance, I think we should go and see what paperwork they have and do something, because I guess I wouldn't want to approve paying this membership until we know exactly where we stand.
Yeah.
And that paperwork should be provided to us prior to that meeting.
Right, it should be.
So we're not gonna go there and get blindsided with something we want.
That's probably what's
To
gonna
know.
happen, but I've called, I meant to reach out to Mr. Biddison again today now after I've gotten that in the mail, but the day got away from me a little bit, but I thought tomorrow, Wednesday, I'll touch base with them. The bill itself isn't due till the end of April, so it's
That's
not
right.
like you're under the,
Right.
to get that done right now, but I figured I'd bring it to you guys, knowing that we talked about it last year and there was a change from years past, and I mean,
I think we should be represented at the meeting though, if somebody's gonna be discussing us, we should have our,
yeah,
at least to hear what's going on
yeah.
firsthand.
And then again, they may be discussing the fact that they're not getting $600 and how are they gonna make up that deficit for their club?
Well, they might be, and that's,
You know,
that's fine.
That's probably all it's gonna be. That's a big chunk to take out. You're paying a big portion of that when you look at everybody else's contribution.
Right,
You know, it's all itemized there.
So we did pay
you
$600,
paid 10.
and then we paid 10, or just, we've always paid 10.
Oh, well, we had been paying 600, we paid 10 last year.
It was a sliding rate, but right now it's been set at about $600 per community. And the conversation a year ago wasn't so much, it wasn't a good group, it was more in comparison to
Right. If
the
we're
lake
pay-
group that we've got now. I do remember that.
I
from
remember
the
that too,
council.
we said, how can we justify
That's right.
only $10 to the lake group when water is right next to us as opposed to 600 for the river, which really technically doesn't run through town at all.
Correct.
Yep.
That's why we did it.
That's what we did it.
Exactly why we did
Yep.
it.
And that was, I should back up a little bit, that, I did explain that to Mr. Biddison too when he had asked, about where you at now. What he had mentioned was, of course, the other communities would have to probably pick up that cost then, but that's,
Yeah, but they're also on the river.
You're on the river. I mean, the points are, last year are still valid this year.
yep.
Yep. More so. Because I think we've realized that we're so distant from that
Right.
situation. Okay, moving on to item number 8. Discussion and possible action on city logo clothing.
Yep. We've been in touch, as you had asked, with, I believe it's Kevin from EDI Marketing.
Yeah.
He did call me today and had mentioned that he's coming to World Class on Wednesday. And he said, is that okay if we hold on? He's gonna come Wednesday and meet with me then. So we don't have the rates or anything like that, but he said if he's coming through to World Class, he said, was that okay if I just swing through the city and see how you guys are doing? And he said he could come on his own on a separate meeting if we wanted him to, but we don't have anything to present to you right now other than we did reach out to him and we've been in touch with him on a nicer polo shirt and as opposed to a long sleeve polo, the nicer dress shirt.
You tell him that his world-class contract hinders in the balance here.
I mentioned that we were referred, we had a very good referral, so
Alright.
I did mention that. Yeah,
Okay.
yep,
Well,
But yeah,
eventually
I
think it'll
do-
be okay.
yeah, but I do plan on being in touch with him on Wednesday then, so,
Good.
yep,
Thank you.
yep.
Item number 9. The discussion on the city hall technology and IT upgrades.
Yep, we do have, I've got a document pulled together to act as more of a request for qualifications for IT contractors. I believe, was it last month or the month before, I had talked to you guys about the actual bidding and we compared it to what Little Shoot did.
Right.
One of the things that I guess wasn't really apparent to me, I did talk to you guys a little bit about how Little Shoot had been rushed. It was about a week that they had bid out and specifically bid it out with specifications for their technology. One of the things that they never really got back to me with, or maybe I didn't ask, was who had all bid on your projects or how many bidders did you have? And I did, within the last 2 weeks, talk to the administrator of Little Shoot, and he told me that they only had one. It was only Heartland. And that with the way that they had bid out, they had interested vendors, but whether it was the compressed timeline, where it was only a week turnaround, the way the quotes were written out, where it was very specific, for whatever reason, they only had the one come back to them. You know, when you're looking at a couple $100,000 project, that's not the best thing to only get one company to give you a proposal.
Did they only send
No,
an
they
RFQ to just Heartland?
no, they sent an RFP, but it was very specifically written with the actual parts and the actual equipment that they wanted for cabling and door locks and I won't speak so much to why they only got one vendor, but there was, in the end, they got one vendor, and it ended up being Heartland.
When
No.
you're that specific, though, you're
Yeah, that's tough. That's tough for sure. And on our
How
end,
did they get part numbers and how did they know exactly what they needed unless somebody would have supplied that to them? None of those people are IT experts.
Heartland did.
well, Heartland.
So Heartland, duh, why was there only one quote from Heartland? Well,
Right.
there you have it.
Right. So we've looked, and I talked to you guys about, you know, we could do the same thing and be very specific, and then you get apples to apples, or we can try to loosen it up and get more of a qualification statement from different companies, but also with a loose estimate on what they can do for you. We are going to loosen that up or keep it a little bit more loose so that
Sure.
by the end of March we can have those proposals for you guys, and then you can pick companies.
Okay.
Heartland is obviously going to probably quote out everything that we'll ask for, but there might be a security company that's only interested in cameras and door locks. Or there might be an IT AV company that will give you a boardroom quote. In any way, what you're looking to do is you're looking to find a firm that you can then work with. Once we bid out the project on the back end, then that's when you'll look at developing the shopping list, I guess, that you'll, if the construction bids come in very favorable, well, then you may have more flexibility to add on your technology. And if they don't, well, then maybe we've got to be more creative. But that's the problem, is you're asking for proposals up front, and then on the back end, that's
Right.
probably the area where we're going to be moving around our, what we actually purchase, I guess. So
Those segments though may be very easy, much easier to focus on as to what the wants will be for specific areas of that whole encompassing project.
Yep,
I think that's gonna be easier
Yep.
than looking at one IT quote.
yep.
It's,
Yeah, and the
It'd
way
be
we're gonna
overwhelming.
ask, it'll be a one-page requesting qualifications document, and it's going to say, we're looking at boardroom technology upgrades, we're looking at cabling, and then security would probably be cameras and door locks together, because it's a security type package.
Right.
Those are the three. Now Heartland, or Little Chute did a fourth, they did a phone system, but we already did that though. So we've already gotten our phone system. But within that then, we'll have a couple specifications where you'll want a certain quality of cabling.
Right.
You don't want the very, very cheap stuff, so at least there's some level of comparison. And that's, I don't think a company-specific product. I think we can set out a certain level of cabling, and then that would be, you know, pretty generic across multiple vendors. So that's just the update for now. The other piece that's out there is the server. That's something that we'd have to do regardless of whether we did the City Hall project, but
Right.
with that one, Heartland will be willing to give a quote. There's two other companies for sure out of the valley that will very likely give us quotes on the server. The problem with the server is that that one's gonna require a little bit more time in discussing what we actually needed to do with companies, and the thought with that is in March, late March, we should get that quotes pulled in for that too.
but you're gonna be looking at what you'll need it for in the future as well, correct?
Right.
So add that
Yep,
growth to the thought process.
yep, yep,
Great. Thank you.
yep.
So, did we just kind of bounce into number 10 right away as well?
Yeah, with
Touch
the
that a
Office
little bit?
365.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
do you have a little bit more you'd like to expand on that?
A little bit on Office 365. There's two issues there. One is when we look at our technology upgrades and our server specifically, we'll have to have a solution for our email. And right now, each email account has a 2 gigabyte limit, and mine is full. but we can archive it to the server. The problem with that is our server is full as well, or it's getting full.
Okay.
With Microsoft Office 365, it's more of a cloud-based email, and instead of 2 gigabytes, it gives you 50 gigabytes per person, which is important because we've got to hang on to our emails because they're official public documents. The other part of the Office 365 is that it is a Microsoft Office upgrade. Now, right now, we don't have a license or a bulk license or anything like that for Microsoft Office. So whenever we go buy a new computer, technically we're supposed to buy a brand new packaged Microsoft Office. We did get some quotes on just buying a bulk license, and what that would do is it would just keep us up to date with Microsoft Office. Every program would be up to date, and then whenever we buy computers, we would just be licensed. The cost on that was about $3,500. We did also get a quote though on the Microsoft Office 365. There's 2 different tiers on Office 365. One tier, both of them will have email. The lower tier, which is set at about $84 for the year per user, it's email, but then it's like a read-only capability for Microsoft Office. So Word, Excel. You wouldn't have a whole lot of capability to create documents, but you could read them. And then the second, the more advanced option is what we had thought would be like a city employee. It's a Plan E3. And I should say the first one on that quote from Heartland, they've got council members for the lower plan, $84 a month, 7 council members. It's looking at about $588. I think that's $588. They got cut off on the
$588.
Yep. But that would be an annual cost. What that does is it keeps you completely up to date on Microsoft Office. We've got the licensing, the bulk licensing that we don't have now, and then the cloud email. Number 2 then, Plan E3 would be a subscription license for 1 year. It's the full up-to-date Office applications is Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Outlook, Publisher, OneNote, Access, and Link. Link is more like a video go-to meeting type,
Right.
a meetup type software. Business class email, a calendar, and contacts, again with a 50 gigabyte inbox. Right now, we do not have the Microsoft Office license. So like I said, I believe what we've had when we've had to buy a new computer has been like $200-300 for Office, which isn't a very good way to go at all. Because there's a little bit of uncertainty on what we're doing with our server, obviously we've got to upgrade our server, but we don't have the package server. We don't have it today exactly what we're going with and what product we're going with. But at some point in the next couple months, we'll be looking at getting a brand new server, and we'll probably have to look at addressing email. And as we're looking at replacing computers, if every computer we get without a bulk license, we've got to pay the $270 to $300 for Office if we want to keep it on there.
How much did you say? Okay, this is the 365
Yep.
that you're looking at here. It's $3,240 a year.
Yeah, and what that is that looks at 7 council
I
members.
see all that,
84.
but
Yeah.
okay, now go back and tell me what was the bulk license otherwise for the
$3,500 is the cost that we were quoted about a year ago.
3,500.
Yep.
And how many licenses?
That's for everybody's, and that's not for email though. That's only for Microsoft Office.
It's only for Office. Doesn't include your email at all.
It includes the Outlook software, but it doesn't include the storage or keeping that in the cloud at
So
all.
what would it cost for the email?
We didn't get a quote on that at all.
Because you're looking at just about that amount every year. To me, that doesn't make sense. Unless the email costs that much more. So I guess before I
Yeah.
voted on either one of these, I would want to know how much the bulk licenses would cost
Sure.
with email.
Yeah. Yeah, we could take a look at that for sure. Like we had the technology just before that. It's kind of an update that we're still working on it. Right now, the quote, and we just got the one quote from Heartland to run through Office 365. That's what we're looking at.
Yeah.
For a 1-year cost.
Right. Yeah. But at that cost, you could,
Yeah,
I mean, that,
I get what you're saying. Yep. Yeah, what we don't have is the update on the bulk licensing. But if we went with just the bulk licensing, we would have to have probably a separate, the email solution figured
Right.
out somehow.
yep. So that, and that's, I'd like to know what the cost of that is.
Okay, yeah, and that we do not have right now, so we can get it.
I'd appreciate it.
Okay.
Okay,
Item number 11. Approve checks 31242 through 31296 totaling $202,067.68. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
I'll second.
All in favor?
No, you gotta do a roll call.
that's right.
It's a big
Roll
ticket
call
item.
vote for the checks, yep.
Gunderson,
Aye.
Appleby,
Aye.
Rasmussen.
Aye.
Carried with all ayes.
Okay, administrators
Put
report.
a couple
What do you
quick
got?
things we had in the packet there, but we're working with the auditors now. Now that you had taken action to close out TID number 3, that was January 29th. We get 60 days to notify the state of our official intent to close the TID. Basically, it's a form that we just have to file. And then we have to agree upon a final date that our auditors will close out TID number 3 and then give an audit to the state. Typically, what they do is they just give you 6 months from the date of that resolution. So if that's the case, it would be July 29th. Right now, we did have the auditors in. On Friday, I did talk to Mike Lensmeyer. They're coming in for their field work next week. And so once they get through the field work at City Hall, shortly thereafter, they'll be able to work on closing out TID number 3 and then giving that report to the state. So they said on our form, the state gives us 6 months, we should just request the 6 months and then go from there.
Okay.
So the TID would officially be closed then by the end of July. Again, the auditors are coming in the week of March 9th, which is next week. And then we did talk to the auditors about the financial software and the upgrades. And they've suggested, what I mentioned to them was our goal would be to try to turn on a brand new software package January 1st of 2016. Because then that way, next year for sure, we're just on one brand new software. We don't have to worry about working our audit out of 2 because we already did that in 2013 where we tried to get an audit out of both systems and it didn't work so well. But the auditors basically said there's not really a good time to do that and that no matter what, you'll always be, whatever year you convert, you'll always be doing a lot of extra work. Basically what they said was that they don't feel like we can move to a new software package soon enough, and you'll see that I've got that quoted in there. Among other things, what they've said is if we'd like to look at getting quotes on new software, if we could aim for like September, October to get the new one turned on. Again, at any point this year, if we get to the new software, the auditors just said it'll be what it'll be. And that way, if we can get it September, October to get it rolled out, at least you get a couple months that you're just running the new software so that we can get some of the bugs out if we needed to.
Do you got some ideas in mind?
Yeah, we do. We did get
Good.
some quotes from, I think it was 4 companies the last time, right before I started. There's Workhorse and Civic Systems are 2 that our auditors have said for sure. Those are 2 that they see a lot of. Now, they didn't come and say, look at one of those 2,
right.
but they said they're 2 that work very well in the state of Wisconsin. I think we talked about our current software. We're the only client that our auditors think they have in the state of Wisconsin that have our current software, and they get a little frustrated in working with it too, even when they're here with us. But they did say that Workhorse, Civic Systems, and then there's a couple others that are out there that a lot of clients or a lot of municipalities have in the state. So a lot of those bugs and reporting issues, reporting needs we have, they're already worked out because other communities need it, so. But they did say when they give that final report, usually it's in April or May, Mike will come to the council and give you the rundown on the final audit. He said he's got no problem giving some insight on where we're at. So if it's in May that we're looking at rolling out a new software or approving one, he said that would be no problem, that he could come and talk about that. Okay?
Good, we need to get you set up with something you can work with, be efficient
Yeah.
with.
It's been interesting, for sure.
All
I
right,
don't have anything else.
thank you, Patrick. Now we'll set the April finance meeting time and date.
6th.
First Monday would be April 6th. The night before the general election. Or I should say, not general, but spring election.
I'm good with that.
I'm good
How
with
about
that.
everybody else?
Yep. Till 6 p.m.
6 o'clock, Vicky?
6th?
Yeah.
Okay.
She says she's not gonna be there.
I'll be setting up the election.
That's true, he won't be.
Get whatever you want.
Yeah.
Okay, so be it, April 6th, 6 o'clock. Any other such matters as authorized by law?
No, we don't have any at all.
Well, I'll make a motion to adjourn then.
Hey, Brendan, did you have something to share with us you wanted to talk
Oh,
about
I
before we
just-
ended?
I
Just
missed the,
sit in on the technology discussion,
I
so.
missed the technology and I caught the 365, so I got half of what
Half
I
of
wanted.
Okay,
Well, you know.
I will
Need like
give,
3 of me.
yeah, me too.
will you share some information with Brandon?
Yeah,
later, please?
no, we've been in, even on
Okay.
the, you'll hear next week at the city hall meetings, we've been
Okay,
in touch for sure, especially with
I'm
technology
sure
and the
Christie
layouts
says
there.
one's enough.
Yeah.
Yeah. But we've got, and I should have mentioned this as part of the admin report at the last meeting, but we've only found frost in the ground about 3.5 feet this winter. When we look at our manholes, you can tell about how deep it is. We haven't had to do any digging, but the city of Weyauwega has, and they found about 3 feet, which is pretty standard. Last winter, we had 6.5 to 7 feet, and so we had issues with the freezing up. But AgriPeer's been doing a lot of digging. Now they've got a lot of bare ground there too, but they've found it up to 6 feet deep frost in the area there, which is interesting. It's very interesting. But through the rest of the city, we've been checking. It's been 3.5 feet. Last week, the city of Weyauwega started getting some freeze ups in town. On our end, Becky had called everybody that froze up last year. We called them probably about a month ago, right? A little over a month ago.
Yep.
And we
January.
said, you'll want to remember to run your water because instead of, as a finance item, instead of doing one big mass correction to our utility billing, we would much rather have just 10 to 12 of them if we needed to. Last week after we heard a little bit more about Weyauwega having some freeze ups, we called again and quite a few of them weren't really running any water, or we looked on our metering software and we saw that they weren't running any water, so we had some reminder phone calls. So the good news is once you notify people, if they freeze up, the cost to get them remedied, you can apply that rate to them. Technically, we're supposed to pay for the first time unless we give them a heads up or notice, so. But we haven't had any freeze ups on our end yet. We did have one of the mobile homes had frozen up, but that's a little bit different because
scenario.
it's above ground and not completely insulated, so.
Mr. Tolfa's water line has not froze yet
He
this
has
year?
not frozen. And I've talked to him every other day on lake stuff, so he would let me know. He would let me know.
He would.
Okay,
Okay? That's all I got.
real good, thank you, Patrick.
Yep.
Do I hear a motion?
I already made a motion to adjourn.
Yep, your motion's already been made. We need a second.
I'll second, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Fight about it.
I'll second your motion to adjourn. Thank you.